Welcome back everyone to the ultimate guide to Blender 3D rigging and animation, and this is where we're going to start. So the first one we're going to come to is this crate. Now there are a couple of ways you can animate in Blender. One of them is actually just animating kind of on the fly, where you're just actually inserting keys, and the other one is basically building a rig and using bones and weighting and things like that. So I'm going to show you both ways. Now it's important to know that the basic animation will only pretty much work within Blender. You can bake out the actual animations once you've got them in place, but it's still more or less probably not going to work in the games engine that you want. So it's always better, generally, unless you're only working in Blender and you want to do something simple, to start adding in bones. But I'm going to show you both ways anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this barrel first. I'm just going to move it over here like so. Now the other thing you'll notice is we don't actually have any way to, kind of control how we're actually going to animate this. And the reason is because at the moment we're in modeling, and what we need to do is we need to go to layout, and now you'll see it completely changes. It's changed even back to material, so it's not on the render button anymore. But you will see now that we've actually got a timeline. Now at the moment, in this timeline, we have a number of things that you need to be aware of. So the first one is the play button. So we have all our play buttons here. If you press spacebar, you will see that it actually starts playing. If you press spacebar again, you will see it stops playing. Now, one of the most important things before you begin is understanding what this actual timeline is. This basically starts at 1 and ends on 500. If I put it ending on 25, let's say, we can only have animations going in 1 to 25 keyframes, and then it will restart again. So it's very important to make sure that your keyframes are high enough for your animation before you begin, or you can alter it on the fly, I guess. But what I'm trying to say is that you don't want to end in halfway through the animation. So if that happens, this is the reason why. Now you can change it here, but you can also change it where this little printer is. You have a frame start and you have a frame end, and you can also change it on here as well, which makes it kind of handy for when you want to render out animations and things like that. All right, so now we've discussed that. When you're going into the timeline, you can actually zoom in with your mouse. You can hold the middle mouse button to move across, and you can also hold the middle mouse and pull it down. Sometimes, if you can't see your keyframes in here, they'll actually be hidden up the top, and the only way to get them back is just to get the middle mouse button and just pull it down. Or we can actually press the dot button on the number pad, but we'll discuss that a little bit later on in the course. Now the other thing is it's kind of hard sometimes to put this exactly where you want it to go. So what I tend to do is if I can't get it to there, I'll come over to the right hand side and I'm just going to set this on 1. Now the other thing is it's also important to make sure that you're not starting animations on 0. Never start animations on 0, always start them on 1. And the reason is because once that ends past 300, it's basically going to start on frame 1 again. If you have an animation starting from, let's say, frame 0, it's not actually going to work correctly and you're going to see a slight judder. So if that happens, you know that you've probably set the keyframe to 0. Now that brings us on to keyframes. What are they? So let's discuss what a keyframe is. A keyframe, so let's grab this actual crate, press the I button, and what we've got is a menu here telling us where we actually want to pin this in space and time within Blender. That's basically what a keyframe is. So at one point in space and time, this object is going to be here, and then in another point space and time, the object's going to be here. And basically keyframes are like anchor points to anchor either the scale, the rotation, or the location. Now you've got keyframes in just simple animation like what we're going to do here, or you have them much more complex in bones and rigs because there are a lot more things what need to be altered all at the same time. So that's where the complexity comes from, and that is basically what a keyframe is. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to press I and we're going to click location. Now that means that this crate at the moment on frame 1 is here, basically here in the actual viewport. Now the other thing is when you're pressing I, don't press I down here because it's actually going to not work. What you need to do is press I in the actual viewport. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'll grab this crate and I'll move it over here. And let's say I want to keyframe this from 1 to however many frames it is over here. Now the problem you're going to have is the moment I move this timeline now to put my keyframe in, I'm going to make it jump back. So what you need to do is you need to move this timeline before actually putting your keyframe in. So I'm going to move it over here, and then I want it to move, let's say, over to just before this ball, let's say something like that. And then I'm going to press I and location. Now what you'll see is, if I press spacebar, the actual crate is going to move over there to the endpoint, which is 140. Now you can see at the moment, it's going all the way over here. And then what will happen is, the moment I go past this point, it's going to restart again. Now we don't really want that. So what we wanted to do is go back to this point. The other thing we want to do is, it's a bit slow for my liking moving over here. So I really want to speed this up. So the way that I can speed it up, or the easiest way to speed it up, is simply come over here, put it on frame 1. So it's basically the start. And then what you're going to do is you're going to press A, and you're going to grab both of these. So A will select everything. Now, if I press S, I'm going to move these now to where I want them. If I put this from over here and I press S, you will see that we're moving them from this point. So it's important when you're scaling these to make it faster or slower that you are scaling from frame 1. So if I scale this, in the timeline, let's scale it to 60 frames instead, like so. Now press spacebar and you can see it's much, much faster. Now, the other thing is you might want to scale these down because it might be, let's say, over, frame 275 and you've got a wheel rotating. Now, 275 divided by 4, let's say, because you want that wheel rotating 90 degrees spread over 4, which will show you when we come to our actual wheel turning animation. It's going to be really hard to work out where we actually need to put our keyframes. So what you really want to do is you want to put your keyframes in, with an even number between them, and then scale them down to wherever you need them. That is the easiest way. Now, the other thing is, if I put this to frame, let's say 120. So let's put this on frame 120. Press the spacebar. This will move over here. But then what happens is when it gets to 120, it's simply just going to pop back in place. Now, that's not something that I really want to happen. I want it to actually move back down to this space. Now, because halfway point is over at 60, we might as well make it to 120. So I don't really want to move this back here, and try and put a keyframe in to where it's actually going to be. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to put this on 120. I'm going to grab just this keyframe here because this is the start one. I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate it, and then I'm going to move it over. Now, you will notice as this moves, big yellow bar on there, and basically what that's telling me is that this is the same. So it's basically the same location as what this one is over here. The moment I go past here and drop this in 120, this will disappear because it's no longer the same. So now you can see, if I restart this, press spacebar, comes to the stop and goes back, and then it should keep going backwards and forwards like so. Now let's say I want to make it come to this point quicker, then go back. So if I grab the middle one, press G just to move it along, like so. And now, when I press spacebar, it's going to be really slow here, but it's going to go back really fast. So you can see now you can actually speed it up or slowing down. Now, the other thing you'll notice is the fact that it starts off really slow. And that's great for a kind of rolling start and things like that. But the moment it actually gets over here, you can see it slows down and then it's the same, and then we want it basically the same speed all the way through. And it's important that you learn this because when you're on a wheel or something, if you don't have that, or if you don't know how to do that, you're going to end up with this kind of juddering motion. So what we're going to do now is we're going to come to our actual barrel. I'm going to spin my barrel around, so RX 90, and let's have it facing the right way. And then what we're going to do is now, I'm going to put this on a little bit higher. So let's try 200. Now you will notice the moment I put on 200, this will go forwards, then it will go back, and then it will just stop because we've only based this over 160 frames. So you've got to bear in mind that if you're doing like a large scene or something like that, if you're rendering it out in Blender, you really need to keep the animations all together. So let's say you're doing it over 500 frames. You need all your animations, so your swings and things like that, all going up to 500 frames. Now, if you're sending it through to something like Unreal Engine, the animations can be split up. So the animations will work over how many frames the animations are set at. In Blender though, we're doing it over 500 frames and we can't actually set each individual one like that. So this is the way that we have to actually work this. In other words, the animation's not based over the model frames, it's based over the entire scene. So we just have to take that into account. All right, so what we'll do then on the next lesson is I'll show you how to set up a rolling barrel and how to make it move in a kind of realistic fashion. All right, everyone, so I hope you enjoyed that and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.